Mara walked out of the prison gate with a small cloth bag hanging from her hand. The morning air felt cold and sharp on her face. She stopped for a moment and looked at the road in front of her. She had waited 20 years for this day. Now that it had arrived, her mind felt both empty and full at the same time. She was an old woman now. Her hair was white and her hands had thin lines that showed hard years. But her eyes still carried a steady light. No one came to meet her. No one called her name. A guard pointed her toward the bus stop and went back inside. Mara nodded and started walking. Each step felt strange, like her feet had forgotten what freedom was. The town was not far, but the distance felt long because her heart carried heavy memories. She had one place to go. The house that once belonged to her. The house she had left behind in a single night. She kept the address in her pocket like a tiny piece of hope. She did not know if the house still existed. She did not know if anyone would let her in. She only knew that she could not begin again without seeing it. The bus arrived with a loud sound. Mara climbed in slowly and sat near the window. The seats felt rough. The voices around her felt too loud. People talked about work and school and small daily problems. Mara listened without meaning to. It was strange to hear life moving on like nothing had happened. As the bus moved through streets, Mara stared outside. The town looked different. Shops had new signs. Roads were wider. Some old buildings were gone. New houses stood where empty lots used to be. She tried to recognize places from her past, but many felt unfamiliar. Still, her memory guided her like a quiet map inside her mind. When the bus stopped near her old street, Mara stepped down and stood still for a moment. She looked around, as if the ground might disappear under her. She took a deep breath and began walking. The street was calmer than she remembered. Trees were taller now. Fences looked newer. Cars were parked where children once played. Then she saw it. Her house. It was still standing. That alone made her chest tighten. But it had changed. The walls were painted in a fresh color. The garden was neat and full of flowers. The porch steps looked repaired. The old gate was replaced with a new one. Mara stood at the edge of the yard and felt her eyes burn with emotion. She had imagined coming back to a broken house covered in weeds. She had imagined silence and dust. Instead, she saw a home that looked lived in and cared for. That confused her. It also frightened her. Mara walked up the path slowly. Her shoes brushed the small stones that she once placed there with her own hands. She remembered planting flowers with her husband. She remembered washing the porch and watching sunsets. Those memories rose like warm smoke and made her heart hurt. She reached the front door and stopped. Her hand lifted, but her fingers trembled. She did not know who lived here now. She did not know what they would say if she told them the truth. She did not even know if she had any right to knock. But she had nowhere else to go, and the weight of 20 years pushed her forward. She knocked gently. Footsteps came from inside. Mara held her breath. The door opened, and a young woman stood there. She was in her late 20s or early 30s. Her hair was dark and tied back. Her face showed surprise and caution. The young woman asked who Mara was looking for. Mara swallowed and spoke softly. She said her name was Mara. She said she used to live here. She said she had come back after many years away. The young woman stared at her. The surprise on her face shifted into shock. She took a step back like the air had moved. She looked Mara up and down as if trying to match a story in her mind with the real person standing in front of her. The young woman finally spoke again. She asked if Mara was really the Mara from the old case. Mara did not answer with anger or pride. She only nodded slowly. Her voice was quiet when she said yes. The young woman held the door open wider. She asked Mara to come inside. Mara stepped into the living room and felt like she had entered another world. The room was clean and bright. The furniture was modern. The curtains were different. The walls had pictures of people Mara did not know. The air smelled like fresh tea and soap. Nothing looked like her old home anymore. And yet the shape of the room was the same. The corners were the same. The windows were in the same place. It felt like her memories were sitting under new layers. Mara sat down on a sofa. Her hands rested on her knees. She kept her eyes low. She did not want to look too long because she feared the tears that might come. The young woman introduced herself as Lena. Her voice was polite but careful. She said she lived here. She said she had bought the house a few years ago through proper papers. She said she believed the house had no owner because it had been sold after many years of being empty. Mara listened quietly. She did not interrupt. She did not accuse. She knew the world did not pause for her 20 years. The world moved on and took her place. Lena poured a glass of water and placed it near Mara. Her hands shook a little too. She looked like someone holding a secret. Mara finally asked one question. She asked how Lena knew her name. She asked how Lena knew her story. Lena sat across from her. She said the town still talked about it. She said the story became one of those stories people pass around in whispers. She said she read the old newspaper lines when she first moved in because neighbors mentioned strange things about the house. She said she learned that a woman named Mara once lived here and then disappeared into prison. Mara's eyes lifted. She tried to read Lena's face. Lena looked nervous. Not because Mara was dangerous. It felt more like Lena was afraid of what the truth might do to both of them. Then Lena stood up and walked to a shelf. She picked up an old frame that looked out of place among the newer items. She brought it to Mara and held it carefully. Inside the frame was a photo. Mara recognized it instantly. It was her and her husband standing in front of the house when it was newly painted. They were smiling. Mara had a red scarf on her head. Her husband had his arm around her shoulder. The sunlight in the photo looked soft and golden. Mara's breath caught. Her fingers reached out and touched the glass lightly as if touching the photo could bring back the people inside it. Her eyes filled but she did not cry. She just stared as if the picture was a doorway. Mara asked where Lena got it. Lena said she found it during repairs. She said it was hidden behind a loose wooden board in the hallway wall. Lena said it felt like someone had placed it there on purpose. Lena said when she found it she could not throw it away. She kept it because it made her feel like the house was still holding a heart inside it. Mara's voice became thinner. She asked why Lena was being kind to her. She asked why Lena let her inside without calling anyone. She asked why Lena looked so shocked, like she had been waiting for this moment. Lena looked down at her own hands. She paused for a long time. The silence stretched between them like a tight rope. Then Lena looked up and spoke slowly. She said there was something Mara needed to know. She said the reason she bought this house was not only because it was cheap or in a good area. She said she felt drawn to it. She said she had been searching for something for years and she believed this house was connected to that search. Mara felt her heart beat harder. She did not understand. But she could feel that Lena was not just a stranger. Something about Lena's eyes felt familiar in a way Mara could not explain. It was like looking at someone and feeling a memory without knowing where it came from. Lena stood up again and walked toward the hallway. She stopped near a door that led to the back rooms. She turned and told Mara to follow her. Mara rose slowly. Her legs shook. She followed Lena down the hallway. The walls looked freshly painted, but Mara could still remember the old cracks and marks that once were there. Lena stopped in front of a small room that used to be a storage space long ago. Lena opened the door. Inside the room was clean but simple. A small table stood near the wall. On it lay a folder filled with papers and a small metal box. Lena looked at Mara with a serious expression. Lena said Mara would be shocked by what was inside. Lena said it would explain everything. Lena said it would answer the question of why Lena was here and why fate brought them into the same house at the same time. Mara stared at the folder and the box. Her throat went dry. Her heart felt like it was stepping toward a truth she was not ready to face. Lena placed her hand gently on the table and said one final sentence in a soft voice. She said Mara was not the only one who lost a life that night 20 years ago. Mara stood frozen as the weight of that line settled over her like a shadow. Mara stood still in the small room and looked at the table. The folder and the metal box felt heavier than they looked. Her heart beat slowly but strongly like it was warning her. Lena waited quietly, giving Mara time to breathe. The house felt very quiet, as if it was listening too. Mara finally took a step forward. She pulled the chair and sat down slowly. Her hands rested on the edge of the table. She did not touch anything yet. Her eyes stayed on Lena. She asked Lena to explain everything from the beginning. Her voice was calm but carried deep tiredness. Lena took a long breath and sat across from her. She said her life had never been simple. She said she grew up moving from place to place with no clear answers about her past. She said she was raised by people who cared for her, but they were not her real parents. Lena said she always felt something was missing. A part of her story was hidden. Mara listened carefully. Her face showed pain and confusion, but she did not interrupt. Lena continued slowly, choosing her words with care. Lena said that many years ago there was a case that changed several lives. A case about a woman who was taken away in the middle of the night. A case about a house left behind. Lena said that story followed her like a shadow even before she understood why. She said when she became old enough she started searching for records and old papers. She said she wanted to know who she really was. Lena reached for the folder and opened it. Inside were old documents yellowed with time. She pulled out one paper and slid it toward Mara. Mara leaned forward and read slowly. Her hands began to shake. The paper talked about a child. A small child who was found on the same night Mara was arrested. A child who was taken away quietly. A child whose name was changed. Mara felt her chest tighten. She felt dizzy as memories rushed back. That night came back to her clearly now. The loud knocking. The shouting. The confusion. The fear. She remembered worrying not only for herself but for something else. Something she had tried to protect. Something she never got answers about. Mara whispered a question. She asked Lena how old she was. Lena answered softly. She said she was 24. The room felt smaller. The air felt heavier. Mara closed her eyes slowly. Her heart understood before her mind did. Tears filled her eyes but did not fall. She pressed her lips together as if holding a sound inside. Lena reached for the small metal box and opened it carefully. Inside were a few items wrapped in cloth. Lena removed them one by one. A small bracelet. A faded piece of fabric. And a folded note. Mara recognized the bracelet instantly. It was handmade. She had made it herself long ago with simple thread and beads. Her fingers touched it gently. Her hands shook harder now. Lena said the bracelet was found with the child that night. It was the only personal item the child had. Lena said it stayed with her through every move and every home. Lena said she always felt it was important even before she knew why. Mara's breath became uneven. She looked at Lena's face. She saw the shape of the eyes, the curve of the mouth, the way Lena held herself. It all felt painfully familiar. Mara finally spoke. She said Lena was her daughter. The words hung in the air. Lena did not deny it. Her eyes filled with tears, but she stayed strong. She nodded slowly. She said she believed it was true. She said the records pointed to it. She said the timing matched. She said everything led back to this house and to Mara. Mara covered her face with her hands. Her shoulders trembled. Years of silence broke inside her. She had thought she lost everything that night. She had thought the world erased her life completely. She had never known what happened to her child. Now the truth stood in front of her, grown and alive. Lena moved closer. She did not touch Mara yet. She waited. Mara lowered her hand slowly and looked at Lena with eyes full of pain and love mixed together. She reached out and held Lena's hand. Their fingers closed tightly, as if afraid to let go. Mara apologized over and over. She said she was sorry for being taken away. She said she was sorry for not being there. She said she never stopped thinking about her child even when the days were dark. She said that thought was what kept her alive. Lena cried quietly. She said she did not grow up with hate. She said she grew up with questions. She said she searched for answers not to blame but to understand. She said she bought the house because something inside her pulled her here. She said she wanted to feel close to where she came from even without knowing why. They sat together for a long time. No one spoke. The silence was not empty anymore. It was full of meaning. The house seemed warmer now, as if it had been waiting for this moment too. After some time Lena stood and made tea. She brought 2 cups and placed them on the table. They drank slowly. Mara felt her body calm for the first time in many years. She looked around the room again. It no longer felt like a stranger's home. It felt like a place that had finally opened its heart. Lena asked Mara what she planned to do now. Mara admitted she had no plan. She said she had come back with nothing but memories. She said she did not know where she belonged anymore. Lena looked at her and spoke firmly. She said Mara belonged here. She said this house was as much Mara's as it was hers. She said she did not want Mara to leave. She said she wanted to learn about her past and her family and herself. Mara felt tears fall freely now. She nodded slowly. She said she did not want to lose Lena again. She said she would stay if Lena truly wanted her to. Lena smiled through tears. She said she had waited her whole life to say that word. Mother. Mara held her daughter close. The pain of the past did not disappear, but it softened. The house that once held sorrow now held reunion. But outside these walls the town still remembered old stories and old judgments. Neither of them knew yet that their reunion would soon face new challenges and truths from the world that once tore them apart. The next morning sunlight entered the house softly through the windows. Mara woke up slowly, and for a moment she did not know where she was. Then she remembered everything. The house. The truth. Lena. Her heart beat faster, but this time it was not fear. It was something warmer. Something she had not felt in many years. She sat up carefully. Her body was old and stiff, but her spirit felt lighter. She could hear sounds from the kitchen. Lena was awake. The smell of warm tea and bread filled the air. It reminded Mara of mornings long ago when life was simple. Mara walked into the kitchen. Lena looked up and smiled. That smile still felt unreal to Mara. She watched Lena move around the kitchen with ease. Every small action felt precious. Mara realized she was seeing things she had missed for more than 20 years. They ate quietly at first. Both were lost in their thoughts. Finally Lena spoke. She said people in the town would soon notice Mara was back. She said neighbors talked a lot and news traveled fast in small places. She said not everyone would be kind. Mara nodded. She said she expected that. She said she had lived with judgment before and she could live with it again. But she worried about Lena. She did not want Lena to suffer because of her past. Lena reached across the table and held Mara's hand. She said she was not afraid. She said she had lived her whole life searching for truth and she would not hide now. She said whatever came they would face it together. Later that day Mara stepped outside the house for the first time since returning. The street felt different now. Some neighbors paused when they saw her. Some whispered. Some looked away. A few stared openly. Mara felt their eyes, but she kept walking slowly with her head high. Lena walked beside her. Her presence gave Mara strength. They went to the small local store at the end of the street. Inside the store the air grew quiet when people noticed Mara. The shopkeeper froze for a moment. His face showed recognition and disbelief. He greeted Lena politely, then looked at Mara again. He asked quietly if it was really her. Mara answered yes. The shopkeeper nodded slowly. He said nothing more, but his eyes carried many thoughts. By evening the town was talking. Some remembered the old story clearly. Some only knew parts of it. Some believed it. Some never did. Old opinions began to rise again like dust from the ground. The next day, a letter arrived. It was from the local office. It said Mara needed to come in to update records and answer questions. Lena read it carefully and looked at Mara with concern. Mara said she would go. She said she would not hide anymore. At the office, people stared openly. A few workers whispered to each other. Mara sat calmly and answered every question with honesty. She spoke slowly and clearly. She had learned patience during long years of silence. When she returned home, she felt tired but proud. She had faced the town and nothing terrible happened. Still, the weight of the past pressed on her heart. That evening someone knocked on the door. Lena opened it. A middle-aged man stood there. He introduced himself as a reporter from a nearby city. He said he heard Mara had returned. He said he wanted to tell her story. Lena stepped in front of Mara immediately. She said they did not want attention. The reporter insisted politely. He said people deserved to hear the full truth. He said many stories had been told without Mara's voice. Mara stood up slowly. She looked at the man and spoke firmly. She said her life was not a story for entertainment. She said she had lost enough already. She said she wanted peace, not headlines. The reporter apologized and left. Lena closed the door and leaned against it. She looked shaken. Mara hugged her gently. She said attention would fade. She said time always softened things. Days passed and life slowly formed a new rhythm. Mara helped around the house. She worked in the garden. She fixed small things. She cooked meals. Simple actions made her feel useful again. Lena went to work during the day and returned in the evenings. They talked for hours. Mara shared stories from the past. Lena shared stories from her life. Laughter slowly returned to the house. One afternoon, an elderly woman from the neighborhood came by. Her name was Nora. She had lived on the street for decades. She looked nervous as she stood at the gate. Mara walked toward her slowly. Nora apologized. She said she believed the rumors long ago. She said she never questioned them. She said seeing Mara again made her realize how wrong she had been. Tears filled Nora's eyes as she asked for forgiveness. Mara listened quietly. Then she nodded. She said holding anger for 20 years was heavy. She said she did not want to carry it anymore. Nora hugged her and cried. It was a small moment, but it meant a lot. Not everyone was kind. Some avoided Mara completely. Some spoke coldly. Some reminded her of the past with sharp words. Each time it hurt, but Lena stood by her side. Together they grew stronger. One night Lena found old boxes in the attic. They opened them together. Inside were Mara's old belongings. Letters. Clothes. A small diary. Mara had written in it years ago before everything changed. Lena read it carefully. She learned about Mara's dreams, her fears, her love. It helped Lena understand her mother beyond the pain. But one item in the box made Mara pause. It was a folded paper she did not remember placing there. Lena unfolded it. It was a copy of an old statement. It showed details that did not match the official story from 20 years ago. Mara's heart began to race. She realized something important. The truth of what happened that night was still incomplete. Someone had lied. Someone had hidden facts. Lena looked at Mara with determination. She said maybe the story was not finished yet. She said maybe justice still mattered even after all these years. Mara felt fear and hope at the same time. She had come back only wanting peace. But now the past was calling again. And this time she was not alone. The house stood quietly as mother and daughter looked at the paper together. Outside the town slept unaware that old truths were about to rise again. The folded paper stayed on the table long after night fell. Mara could not stop looking at it. The words on it felt heavier than chains. Lena sat beside her quietly, giving her space. Both of them understood that opening this door meant stepping back into pain they had just begun to escape. Mara finally spoke. She said she remembered that night clearly, but there were parts that never made sense. She said events moved too fast and people decided her fate before she could explain. She said she always felt someone else controlled the story. Lena listened closely. Her face showed calm strength, but inside her heart burned with questions. Lena suggested they read the paper again slowly. Together they went through every line. The statement showed time gaps and missing details. It mentioned a witness who later disappeared from records. It mentioned items found in the house that Mara had never seen. The more they read, the clearer it became that the truth was broken into pieces. Mara felt anger rise in her chest. Not loud anger, but deep, heavy anger. She said she lost 20 years because of lies or silence. She said she was tired of carrying shame that was never fully hers. Lena placed her hand on Mara's shoulder and said softly that the past could still be faced. The next day, Lena took time off from work. She said this was more important. They decided to visit the town archive. The building was old and smelled of paper and dust. The clerk looked surprised to see Mara but said nothing. Lena requested access to old case records. Hours passed as they searched through boxes and folders. Many papers were missing. Some pages were damaged. Some notes were written in a hurry. Lena noticed one name appearing again and again. A local officer who handled many steps of the case. That officer had retired years ago and moved away. Mara felt uneasy hearing the name. She remembered that man. She remembered how he avoided her eyes. She remembered how he spoke for her instead of letting her speak. A cold feeling spread through her body. Lena asked if they could find his address. The clerk hesitated but finally gave limited information. The officer now lived in a quiet town not far away. Lena looked at Mara and asked if she was ready. Mara nodded slowly. Fear was there, but it no longer ruled her. They traveled the next morning. The road was long and silent. Lena drove while Mara stared out the window. She thought about her youth. She thought about prison nights and lost years. She thought about holding Lena, now grown and strong. That thought gave her courage. They reached a small house surrounded by trees. The place looked peaceful. Lena parked the car and helped Mara out. They walked to the door and knocked. After a moment, an elderly man opened it. His hair was gray and his posture slow. When he saw Mara, his face changed. He recognized her instantly. He invited them inside. The room felt heavy. The man avoided Mara's eyes. Lena spoke first. She said they had questions about the old case. She said they were searching for truth, not trouble. The man sat down slowly. He said he had waited many years for this moment. He said guilt does not disappear with time. He said mistakes were made and pressure was heavy back then. He said decisions were rushed to close the case quickly. Mara asked him directly if evidence was hidden. Her voice did not shake. The man nodded. He admitted some details were ignored. He admitted a witness was dismissed because it did not fit the story. He admitted that fear of public reaction pushed them to choose an easy answer. Lena felt anger but stayed calm. She asked why no one corrected it later. The man said fear followed him too. He said silence became easier than truth. Tears filled his eyes as he said sorry. Mara listened without shouting, without crying. She felt tired more than anything. She said sorry could not return her years. She said sorry could not erase nights of loneliness. But she said truth still mattered. The man agreed to write a full statement. He said he would speak if asked. He said he wanted peace before the end of his life. Lena recorded everything carefully. When they left the house, Mara felt both lighter and heavier at the same time. Back home, Lena contacted a legal helper. The process was slow and careful. Old wounds reopened. The town heard whispers again. Some people supported Mara. Some doubted her. But this time the truth had a voice. Mara faced sleepless nights. Memories returned stronger. Some days she felt weak. Some days she felt powerful. Lena stayed close every step. She reminded Mara that she was not alone anymore. One evening a public meeting was announced. The case would be reviewed. Mara stood in front of the mirror, adjusting her simple dress. Her hands shook slightly. Lena hugged her and said she was proud of her. At the meeting, people filled the room. Faces from the past mixed with new ones. Mara walked slowly to her seat. She felt eyes on her, but she did not lower her head. She had carried shame long enough. Statements were read. Evidence was explained. The old officer's words were presented. Gaps became clear. Silence filled the room. Some people looked away. Some wiped tears. The weight of truth settled heavily. Mara spoke at the end. She did not accuse. She did not beg. She spoke about loss. About time. About being human. Her words were simple but powerful. The room listened. When it ended, no final decision was announced yet. But something had changed. The story no longer belonged to rumors. It belonged to truth. Mara returned home exhausted. Lena helped her sit. They held hands quietly. Outside the night was calm. The house felt strong, like it was standing with them. The journey was not over yet. Part of justice still waited. But Mara felt something she had not felt in decades. Hope. The days after the public meeting passed slowly. Mara felt tired but calm. Something deep inside her had settled. For the first time in many years, she was not running from the past. She had faced it. That alone gave her strength. Lena stayed close. She watched Mara carefully, making sure she rested and ate well. They spent quiet mornings together in the garden. Mara touched the soil with gentle hands and felt peace growing with every small plant. Life did not feel rushed anymore. It felt honest. One afternoon a letter arrived from the review board. Lena opened it with shaking hands. Mara sat beside her waiting. The letter confirmed that the case was officially reopened. Old decisions would be examined again. New statements would be considered. Lena read the words slowly, then looked at Mara with wide eyes. Mara closed her eyes. She did not smile. She did not cry. She only nodded. Justice was slow, but it was moving. The town reacted quickly. Some people apologized openly. Some stayed silent. A few still held their doubts. Mara accepted all reactions quietly. She no longer needed everyone to understand her. She only needed truth to exist. Weeks passed. Meetings followed. Documents were reviewed. The old witness who was ignored years ago was found alive in another town. That person confirmed details that supported Mara. Piece by piece the truth came together like a broken mirror slowly repaired. One morning Lena received a call while making tea. She listened quietly, then covered her mouth with her hand. Tears filled her eyes. She turned to Mara and said the words she had dreamed of saying. The board declared that Mara was wrongly judged. The world seemed to pause. Mara felt weak and strong at the same time. Lena rushed to her and held her tightly. They cried together, not from sadness but from release. 20 years of weight lifted in a single moment. News spread quickly. The same town that once whispered now spoke with respect. People who avoided Mara now greeted her kindly. Some brought food. Some brought letters. Some simply said they were sorry. Mara accepted every gesture with grace. She did not hold anger. She knew anger had already taken too much from her life. A small gathering was held at the community hall. The local leaders spoke about mistakes and responsibility. Mara was invited to speak, but she chose simple words. She said truth mattered. She said time was precious. She said kindness should never wait for proof. People listened silently. Many cried. Life slowly changed again. This time in a gentler way. Mara received support to help her live comfortably. She did not ask for much. She already had what mattered most. Lena and Mara worked together to restore the house fully. Not to erase the past but to honor it. They kept some old details. A corner shelf. A window frame. A photo on the wall. The house became a bridge between past and present. Mara began writing again. She wrote about prison nights. About silence. About hope. She wrote not to accuse but to heal. Lena helped her organize the pages. Together they created something meaningful. One evening they sat on the porch watching the sky change colors. Mara spoke softly. She said she once thought her life ended the night she was taken away. She said now she understood that life paused but never truly left her. Lena smiled and rested her head on Mara's shoulder. She said she never felt complete until now. She said knowing her mother gave her roots. Mara held her close. She said roots grow even in dark places. The town slowly returned to normal, but something had changed forever. People questioned stories more. They listened longer. They judged less quickly. Years later children played on the same street laughing freely. They knew Mara as the kind old woman who grew flowers and shared stories. They knew Lena as the woman who stood for truth. The house stood strong, filled with warmth and light. It was no longer a place of loss. It was a place of return. Mara sometimes sat alone thinking about the years she lost. The pain never fully disappeared. But it no longer controlled her. She had gained something rare. Peace. When people asked her how she survived, she always gave the same answer. She said hope does not shout. It waits quietly until someone listens. And in that quiet house once filled with secrets, a mother and daughter lived fully. Not defined by the past but shaped by courage and love.